For decades, Hamas has been one of the most militant groups against Israel since its founding, taking political control of the Gaza Strip in 2006, and later starting a war in Israel in a brutal surprise attack. Hamas has backed up its charter with actions, showing that it's willing to put its money where its mouth is. Let's take a look at the Hamas Covenant and understand how this shapes the organization that is Hamas and how it views the world. To understand Hamas, it's crucial to understand its beliefs, canonical history, and objectives, and all of that is spelled out in its charter called the Covenant. A link to it is included in the video description if you want to read along. Hamas was born in the chaos of the First Intifada in 1987. Palestinians, frustrated with the Israeli occupation and a lack of economic and political opportunity, had had enough. In the chaos, Ahmed Yassin, a Palestinian imam, would found the Islamic resistance movement, known colloquially as Hamas, formed from his Islamic charter, a charity associated with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Yassin wanted to see change for Palestine. He felt that the only way to combat the Israeli occupation was with the same language he felt Israel communicated with him: force. Ahmed Yassin published the Covenant, or the Charter, as a type of constitution for his new movement. In it, he separated himself from other Palestinian groups, namely the ruling group Fatah and the PLO, or the Palestinian Liberation Organization, which believed in peaceful resistance against Israel, but otherwise recognized Israel's right to exist and sought dialogue with the Israeli government. The Covenant begins with a quote that sets the tone for the rest of the document, stating, quote, "Israel will exist and will continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it, just as it obliterated others before it." The next quote builds upon this theme. "The Islamic world is on fire. Each of us should pour some water, no matter how little, to extinguish whatever one can without waiting for the others." With this, the Covenant establishes that its primary goal is the establishment of a Palestinian state and the obliteration of the Israeli state. This confirms the Israeli government's statements and sentiments that this is an existential threat to them. Even if Hamas doesn't possess the technical capability to obliterate Israel, there is always the risk it can mobilize other actors sympathetic to Hamas to assist in fighting Israel. From there, the Covenant moves into an introduction of the group itself, tying itself to a wider historical struggle for Palestine. A line in the later paragraph makes an interesting distinction, not referring to the state of Israel, but instead more broadly as the Jews, implying that Hamas's declared enemy isn't just with the Israeli state, but with all of Judaism. The Covenant then pivots into the definition of the movement with 36 articles. These articles cover Hamas's definitions, objectives, strategies, attitudes, and canonical history. Articles 1 through 8 make up Hamas's definition. In quick order, Article 1 declares that Hamas's program is Islam, and that it derives authority and understanding for its cause through Islam. Article 2 declares Hamas is a wing of the Muslim Brotherhood in Palestine. Article 3 outlines the structure of Hamas is simply all Muslims, and it invokes a verse in the Quran calling for a jihad against oppression. Article 4 builds on this by inviting all Muslims to its ranks who are willing to hold to Hamas's charter. Article 5 declares that the roots of Hamas span all the way to the beginning of Islam, and involve all Muslims around the world, past and present. Article 6 discusses the characteristics and independence of Hamas as independent and answering only to Allah, with the expressed aim of liberating every inch of Palestine. Article 7 ties it all together and is one of the first articles that discusses the historical and religious significance of Hamas. In it, all Muslims are called to action, with those who fail to join being condemned as ignorant or illogical. It then says that Hamas is just one link in a long chain of events, starting in 1939 to the emergence of Is al-Din al-Qassam and his fighters, al-Qassam being the namesake for the military wing of Hamas, the al-Qassam Brigades. It then spans to the wars in 1948 and 1968 to present day. Finally, Article 7 reaffirms the earlier broader declaration against Judaism, with a passage from the Prophet, quote, "The day of judgment will not come about until Muslims fight the Jews, killing the Jews, and the Jew will hide behind the stones and trees. The stones and trees will say, 'O Muslims, O Abdullah, there's a Jew behind me, come and kill him.' Only the Gurkid tree, evidently a certain kind of tree, would not do that because it's one of the trees of the Jews." Finally, Article 8 declares the slogan of Hamas, stating, quote, "Jihad is its path, and death for the sake of Allah is the loftiest of its wishes." The Covenant then moves into the objectives of Hamas, which constitutes Articles 9 and 10. Article 9 describes the world that Ahmed Yassin believed he was in, where Islam had been pushed to the fringes and chaos had reigned in its place. In this article, Hamas acts to restore its homeland and establish an Islamic state. Article 10 declares that Hamas will pave the way for this and fight against suppression, sparing no effort. Articles 11 through 22 cover the strategies and methods of Hamas. Quickly running through each, Article 11 outlines that the land that makes up present-day Israel is consecrated for Muslims until Judgment Day, and that all Muslims should seek to reclaim it so that it can be reserved for the end of days. Article 12 declares Hamas's cause is greater than traditional forms of nationalism, where the nationalism referred to by Hamas is rooted in religious tradition and calling, on top of the materialistic, human, and regional causes in other forms of nationalism. Article 13 states that peace negotiations and conferences are out of the question, as in the eyes of Hamas, they only benefit the infidel. Article 14 establishes the three circles: the Palestinian circle, the Arab circle, and the Islamic circle, all of which are a part of this cause and cannot be forgotten. Article 15 further states the religious significance of the movement, and even ties it to the Crusades, quoting British General Allenby at the end of World War I, quote, "Only now have the Crusades have ended." And again, French General Gourou, who visited Salah al-Din, known in English textbooks as Saladin, as stating, quote, "Saladin, we have returned." It also describes the threat of ideological imperialism and how Muslim youth must be protected from the education of outsiders. Article 16 builds on Article 15 in building out an educational regimen for youth that is Islamic and doesn't feature any of the outside ideology that is attributed to their enemies. Articles 17 and 18 outline the rules for Muslim women, which it determines is no less important than that of Muslim men. Here, Muslim women are responsible for educating and bringing up Muslim youths, who will either become mothers themselves or become fighters. This echoes Article 16 in its emphasis on education, and again calling for the abstainment from groups that it views as imperialist constructs, namely the Freemasons and the Rotary Club. Article 19 describes the role of Islamic art in the battle for liberation, concluding that those who are fighters do not jest, which does contradict the soldiers that I've met, but I digress. Articles 20 through 22 outline social mutual responsibility, which is really only discussed in Article 21. Articles 20 and 22 describe how Hamas views, once again not Israel, but the Jews more broadly, as Nazis, who behave and treat Muslims like Nazis. Article 22 in particular reads like many other anti-Semitic conspiracy theories, describing a massive conspiracy blaming Jews for World Wars I and II, as well as for infiltrating media and other forms of society and government, all to the detriment of Muslims. Articles 23 through 33 cover Hamas's attitudes towards different organizations and groups. Articles 23 and 4 cover their attitude towards Islamic movements, which it views favorably, even acknowledging that it may not be in full agreement with other groups, but it will find agreement in other areas with those groups. Article 25 and 6 cover Hamas's views on nationalist movements in Palestine. In them, nationalist movements are also viewed favorably, so long as they don't align themselves to what it calls the Communist East nor the Crusading West. It reaffirms that this is a fighting movement, and it will support nationalist movements that are only for Palestine and that are in line with what it previously described with as one of the three circles. Article 27 outlines Hamas's view of the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or PLO, which it describes as the closest to the heart of Hamas. However, it describes how the PLO has drifted into the vision of a secularist state, which it does not support. It ends stating how the PLO will not have the support of Hamas until it adopts Islam as its way of life. Articles 28 through 30 share their views on the Arab and Islamic countries, as well as other non-state actors in the Arab world, which are requested to open their borders to Islamic fighters who are willing and able to march on Israel, if not outright join hands with Hamas in their fight. It concludes in Article 30 with a description that jihad isn't just confined to carrying arms, and that intellectuals and scholars are invited to fight with words and articles. Article 31 describes Hamas's view of followers of other religions, stating that Islam, Judaism, and Christianity can all coexist under Islam as long as they stop trying to debate the sovereignty of Islam in the region. Articles 32 and 33 outline the attempt to isolate the Palestinian people. It declares the Camp David Agreement is treacherous, pulling Egypt and tempting other Arab nations to leave the circle of struggle against Israel. It calls leaving the circle of struggle as high treason, calling on those who have done this to join the fight with all energy, or they too will lose their country. They again justify this in Article 33 by tying their struggle to the roots of Islam and the fight to liberate Al-Aqsa Mosque, which is also known to the Jews as the Temple Mount. Finally, Articles 34 through 36 all cover the canonical history that Hamas observe. Article 34 roots the history of the conflict in the Crusades, with Article 35 recognizing Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi as the first to defeat the Crusaders and that Hamas has the duty to continue the fight. Article 36 summarizes everything we've already covered, reaffirming Islam as its way of life and that its only mission is to support everyone fighting against what it calls the Zionist enemy and its lackeys. This was the original charter in 1988. However, it has gone through some unofficial revisions since it was written according to the leadership within Hamas. In 2006, Hamas released statements and materials that implied that Israel could, in fact, be recognized, as long as that was what the people of Palestine collectively wished to do. This led to debate at the time that Hamas was softening its stance. However, there was widespread doubt that this was actually genuine. Simultaneously, a co-founder of Hamas, Mahmoud Zahar, stated that not a single word of the covenant would ever be changed. In 2010, Khaled Mashal, who led Hamas at the time, claimed the charter was a piece of history and no longer relevant, but could not be changed for internal reasons. Mahmoud Zahar would come back to reiterate his statement, stating that the goal is to have Palestine in its entirety, again stating that Israel will not be recognized. Since then, no official updates have been officially made to the covenant. Therefore, what's written should be considered the official doctrine of Hamas to this day. If you found this video helpful or informative, leave a like and comment with something that you found interesting. To see how Hamas placed Israel in a lose-lose position, check out this video. Until next time.